Welcome to the For Real Though Show, your podcast with a purpose for the people. And before we get to today's show, I just want to share a couple things with you. I know 2020 was a really tough year, a really challenging year for all of us, not just with COVID-19, but also with just the struggle for Black people, people of color to exist. Whether it's whether we're talking about George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and the names go on and on and on. This fight for equal justice, equal rights under the law, it's been a tough one. It's been so 2020 was really, really a stressful, tenuous year, for all those reasons. And then, obviously, wasn't that long ago, the cycle of news moves pretty fast. So it's easy to forget, just how far we've come and what we've been through because things are changing and rotating so fast. Well, it was just a few months ago that we were really concerned about getting through the election and dealing with 45 and Louis DeJoy, you know, doing everything they can with the mail system, um, just doing everything they could to just stop us from voting and stop our votes from counting. So we got through that, and then we needed to get through Georgia, with the runoffs. We got through that. So we were mobilized, very well, those two opportunities and that we took. And so, we were able to get some things done, some really big things done, politically. Uh, then you had the insurrectionists, the thugs at the Capitol, obviously on January 6th, the day that we live in infamy. And so I understand that there's a lot has gone on, but you know, we are so far from all of this being over with. We're so far from our struggles being over. You know, uh, CPAC, which is the Conservative Political Action Committee, I believe that's what it is. Anyway, it's a bunch of right wing racist conservatives these days, and they got together and decided after their meeting that they needed to cut our vote down. Let's go all the way back to the Jim Crow era. And so you got 253 bills in 43 states that have been introduced to suppress our votes. By our, I mean progressives. I mean people of color. I mean people who are not racist. And you got to understand that, to the white supremacists, uh, as far as they're concerned, with the population changing, they're no longer going to be the majority of the country. So their worst fears, that they got in their head is coming true, that they don't get to preserve this caste system, of racism and white supremacy. They don't get to preserve that. Uh, so, they're going out of their way, to disenfranchise us. And so, it's just really important to make sure we understand that, you know, their attacks are ongoing, over and over again. The FBI as well as Homeland Securities have told us for months and months and months, if not years, that the biggest threat to the United States is white supremacy and white supremacists. So, you saw it with the latest uh, Asians, not just the shootings that happened in Atlanta, but also just getting beat up on trains, walking down the street, attacking Asians, all because of, 45 and talking, shit about, you know, uh, our Asian brothers and sisters. And so they've come under attack. There was a gunman outside of Vice President Kamala Harris's residence that had, weapons. He had plenty of ammunition. So this is real, folks. You got to understand that we are far, far from, getting through what we need to get through. And so we got to remain vigilant. I know that life goes on. We have to live. We got a lot of things to be concerned about in everyday living, but you can't let this slide. You can't let this pass you by. One of those bills. in Georgia that they proposed would actually make it a crime for you to give someone water or food in a voting line. Think about that. I mean, that's ultra petty. Like that's super petty because you know who's going to end up in long lines. It's going to be people in black neighborhoods, minority neighborhoods, where they're closing polls, closing polling places, all over those areas. So where normally you might have had eight, now you got one. And everybody's going to be piled up in there. They're going to have the jankiest machines. And then they say, hey man, I don't care if it's hot or if it's cold. We can't even bring you food or water. I mean, that's you know they're not even hiding behind um, dog whistles anymore. It's just flat out. It's just flat out. So, it's not to say we got to be on 100 all the time because I know that's hard. Again, I know that there's fatigue, but, we can't let, you got to pay attention and you can't let this stuff slide, without taking a stand and organizing, keeping your senators, your local, your local and federal officials, aware that you see what's going on and that you're not going to stand for it. So, um, yeah, that's it for that. So, I mean, you got to understand that, you know, we're still in the midst, no different than the Montgomery bus boycotts. We are right there in the midst like we were before. It's just not getting talked about as much per se, because again, things move so fast. So don't let it slide past you though. Don't let it slide past you. So with that, we're going to get into our topic, which is we're still in the self help. So, speaking of self help, I hope you all are doing well. Uh, I've been going through myself, doing the best I can, stay active every day. I was recently furloughed actually at the job at the end of January. So, been job hunting and everything. Uh, Still staying busy with the roughing as much as I can. So glad to have those opportunities. Actually, rough 7 different sports now. So, it's a way to keep busy and keep some income coming in, if you know what I'm saying. Recently got the COVID shot, my first one the other day. Had to travel to a little town called Chillicothe, Ohio. It's about an hour away from me because, man, it's really kind of tough getting in there. Every people are getting a shot, and that's really good. That's good. It's good. You have to schedule. You just can't walk up in the spot. So I'm really happy, to have that first step. Arm is pretty sore right now. It's almost like I was talking to a friend of mine last night. We were texting, and I said it's almost like getting hit with a fastball. A foul tip you behind the plate umpire and bang off your arm. That's kind of how it feels. But I'm glad to have gotten that started. Uh, so anyway, so we're again back to our self help. Uh, Not sure how far we're going to go with this, but I see maybe another episode or two in this self help thing, and none of this is to take the place of a real therapist or a counselor. I'm not neither of those. I'm just a guy, and what I try to do is just share, my experiences. Be very vulnerable and transparent about those in hopes that it's something you can relate to, and you can get something out of it yourself. So today though, so we're going to talk about guilt, remorse, embarrassment, and shame. Guilt, remorse, embarrassment, and shame. And also after that, after we muddle through this topic a little bit, we're going to review a movie at the end of this that I recently watched that I think you should too. So as far as this guilt, remorse, embarrassment, and shame, again, we talked about this before that, you know, obviously we all want to live our best life, right? And sometimes, you know, if we don't understand what's preventing us from living our best life or those things that do prevent us, then it's really hard to do that. So, one of the things that's really, really, really tough to get through because it's so sneaky, is shame. Shame is really Shame is devious. It's a devious thing. And one thing about it is it can just sneak up on you. And, it's one of those things that just can live with you because it starts all the way from childhood, often very, very early childhood, and it just becomes something you live with and don't even realize it's there. Shame is something it's like an inner voice, that's inhibiting you, that's talking to you and dealing with you in a very sinister way. And there are many ways, we could be shamed. It could be, class shame. It could be caste shame, which is like your color. Uh, it can be socioeconomic, like if you're a kid and you got on a certain kind of clothes, but then your other friends got, clothes that are, more popular, more, what do you call that? What's that word? Not generic, name brand, I guess. I guess you will, name brand type of thing. There's body shaming. There's, one of the simple things is dancing. Dancing, a lot of shame in dancing. It really just comes from really being who you really are. That's the tough part. And I'm going to actually give you an example about dancing. That was one of my big ones. There's a difference. There's a difference between guilt and shame. There's a guilt difference between remorse and embarrassment. So let's talk about them. For one thing about guilt is, you know, um, so like an observation, right? An observation uh, that there is something wrong or there's something that you did, right? Whereas shame is a personalization, and we'll get to that. Embarrassment is external. It's external. You fall down outside. You're embarrassed. It's kind of an external thing. But shame is really internal. And again, we're going to get into some of those examples. Guilt is like acknowledgement. It's ownership. Hey, I hurt someone. I'm sorry. Uh, Stepped on your toe, ran into your car, or something like that. Hey, that's acknowledgement. You're taking ownership. I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings. I'm sorry that I said something, did something that hurt your feelings, or I offended you in some way. Uh, that is ownership. Remorse is, again, you're sorry for what you did. You regret what you did. You hopefully there's some sense of repentance to it, right? So again, guilt is just acknowledgement, taking ownership. Remorse is, being sorrowful, having regret. Again, hopefully repentance. And shame again is a personalization because shame goes into defining who you are and what your value is, which is different. Shame is, like say for instance, guilt is like say I did something bad. Again, shame is I am bad. And I looked this up. I was looking online, and there's a lot of information out there online where you can get into, guilt and shame and things of that nature. But I was looking at behavioral health evolution, which is the bhevolution.org. Okay. And it talked about, some things about shame. Again, shame is like I am, you know, not I made a mistake, but I am a mistake. Not I did bad, but I am bad. It gets really personal, because it's a judgment on your own self-worth. Um, instead of saying again, talking about an action, it personalizes it, and it gets to the point where you think you're nothing, you think you're worthless, think you're invisible, you think you're small, you think you're impotent, you think that you're or a mistake, and I remember I used to feel that way. I used to feel that I was a mistake, way back in the day. So I can relate. Embarrassment is kind of like shame's cousin. You know what I mean? Because you could get your hurt, you could get your feelings hurt if you're in an embarrassing situation. But people tend to get over that. It's kind of a temporary thing that you stands out. Again, embarrassment is external. It's external. It's minor and it's normal. So let me give you an example of embarrassment. This is me embarrassed. So back in the 10th grade, I think it was 10th grade, 10th or going into 11th grade. I remember I decided to try my hand at a Jerry curl, right? So this had to be 1983, 84. And I went over my girlfriend's house at the time, and her sister said, she could give me a curl. So, I'm all excited, I'm gonna have my, let my soul glow a little bit. And and so, I go through the process of stuff. And so what it ended up happening was my stuff curled on the side, right? But on the top, it just kind of laid flat. So, I had that uneven jank going, So I had the curls on the side, the shit's flat at the top. And I remember getting in the car, my daddy had picked me up. And I got in the car, and the first thing he looked at me, he says, "So, that's your curl, huh?" And I knew it was bad, man, but I didn't know exactly how bad it was. I mean, I thought maybe you could help. You know what I'm saying? There's those stages of grief, right? So I had this stage of grief of denial, with his hair. So, but anyway, I think that was a Saturday. I got through Sunday. Then I go to school Monday. I go to school Monday, and I go to homeroom, and we do something. East St. Louis, man, at Lincoln, we did something called joning. Joning on you. Some people call it playing the dozens or whatever, but that's when they go in on you and talk about your, your flaws, your especially your external flaws. So, man, I went through homeroom. They talked about my shit. I got through first hour. They talked about me, and I knew my shit was ugly. You know what I'm saying? I knew it was jacked up, stone cold jacked up, right? So I ended up, I was so embarrassed. I had to do something about this. I ended up walking straight out the front door, right out. I walked literally out the front door of Mr. Bailey's office, right? Mr. Bailey was our principal at the time. Shout out Bo Dick, rest in peace. Uh, I walked right out the front door by his office because it was the only door that was open. You couldn't, the rest of the doors were locked. So I wouldn't even be ashamed. Like, I'm getting out of here. I walked right out that door, straight to my barber shop, and was like, hey man, just cut it off. I know most barbers are closed on Mondays, but my barber was open on Mondays. So I had him cut it off. You know what I'm saying? I had to start all over because that curl was jacked up. So that was embarrassment. Now I'm gonna give you another example of shame. So shame, this is, again, we're getting into the internal. Okay, this isn't embarrassment. This is shame. Jer- Jacked up Jerry curl, that was embarrassing. But I can fix that, right? Go get it cut off. Here's an example of shame. So shame, I'm in the eighth grade. Just graduated eighth grade in the South End, Indiana, and this guy has a party. It's funny how I can remember all this stuff from way back in the day. His name was Anthony Reeves. Anthony Reeves had this party. It's like a little blue light basement party, for us eighth graders going into the ninth grade. And so I go, and at this time, my girlfriend, if you will, her name was Latanya. Latanya Bobo. Shout out Latanya Bobo. Hope you're doing well wherever you are. Uh, well, anyway, so we were at this party, and at the basement, the lights are out, and at this time, you got the black light. I don't know, some of y'all youngest don't know nothing about the black light, but we had the black light, and the posters with the Panthers on it and stuff like that. So they was jamming the music and stuff, and I'm sitting down there, and I already know I'm not a great dancer anyway, but my jam comes on. My jam. You know what my jam is? The Gap Band, Yearning for Your Love. That's my jam, right? That's my jam. So that song comes on, and I say to myself, you ain't danced with Latanya all night. I think you better go ahead and, you better do something. So I took the step. I asked her, I said, would you like to dance? And so we dancing, you know. My heart is yearning for your love. So, I'm dancing, I'm trying to do my thing, and I know I'm uncomfortable, right? Because I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm trying. So after a few minutes, couple minutes, it must have didn't take long because hell, the song's probably only 5 minutes or something long. But it didn't take long where she goes, well, are you going to lead or am I? So when she said that, because I knew that the steps were kind of awkward. You know what I'm saying? The back and forth was a little awkward. And so I got embarrassed. I was like, I just got like, I froze. And then I just stopped dancing. I kind of walked away. So I think I went upstairs. I might have said I had to use the bathroom or something. You know what I'm saying? Got, to get an excuse to get away. And I came back down. So when I came back down, there was LaTanya dancing, except she was dancing with Steve Richmond. Shout out Steve Richmond. Steve Richmond was like my arch nemesis back in the day because for whatever reason, for one, it's kind of funny because when I was a kid, I never got along with anybody named Steve. I don't know why. Every time it was somebody named Steve, we never got along. Well, anyway, me and Steve Richmond didn't really get along. And he used to go with LaTanya. So, but here they are dancing, and I mean, Steve is doing the thing. You hear me? He like, they got the movements going. He's tapping the ass and everything, and the rhythm is beautiful. You know what I'm saying? It's the way it should be. You know, and I just remember like just being totally, totally, totally humiliated, right? So not just embarrassed. I was shamed because I couldn't dance. Shame because Steve is over here just killing me in this dance department. Shame because Steve just took my girl, right, swept her off her feet, and danced to this thing. So man, after that, I left the party. Left the party. I remember went to my man Rob Laskowski's house, and shout out Rob. I know I'm shouting everybody out today. I'm just in that kind of mood, but Uh, and I told him what happened, man. I was pretty upset about it. And it's funny because it's almost surprising that Rob wasn't there because Rob's a white guy, but Rob loves all the black music, right? So he's got a lot of soul brother in him. So I'm surprised that he wasn't there. But I guess at that time, he probably didn't think that he'd be all too comfortable there. I don't know. But anyway, so I had this thing, in my head about dancing, and that's slow dancing or fast dancing. So then when I went to Lincoln, when I went to Lincoln High School, we used to have dances and stuff. Uh, and this is again, this is the early '80s. So music was really, you know, really made for dancing at that point. And I remember like if we had a basketball game or something like that, they clear the gym out for the basketball game. You sit outside for like a half hour, 45 minutes, where they set everything up, get your DJ set up, and then you go in, pay your $2 or whatever, and then you go dancing or whatever. So I remember, just I'll be the cat that was standing on the wall, just watching people dancing, and I would just like wish, man, I wish I could do that. I wish I had that rhythm, to go out there and do it. And I mean, the one thing about it, they used to just get into it, right? They used to get into it. Um, and but I never would, like I said, I never would get out there. So I spent a lot. I love the music, you know what I'm saying? So I was gonna go, you know. But then I remember, and it's not even like, don't get me wrong, man. When you think about it now, it's not even like everybody out there was, great dancers or nothing. But they was just out there doing their thing. But I was just kind of petrified. I still had that stigma about me, right? Embarrassing. As a matter of fact, going back to yearning for your love, I'm telling you, man. It was so traumatizing to me that I could not listen to that song until I was like a senior in high school. So by the time I got to be a senior in high school, I was like, okay, I can listen to this song now. And you know, but anyway, so since then, you know, since those days, I'm comfortable with myself dancing now. Again, I'm not a great dancer by any stretch of imagination, but I can go out there and not embarrass myself. I can do a little two steps and stuff like that. I mean, but I am 54. But long before that, long before that, I remember I remember going to my favorite spot at the time, which is still my all-time favorite spot that is no longer with us. Lola, shout out Larry Blue and all the staff at Lola because it was a great, 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 great place to go. It was my spot, and I remember going one day and on a Friday night, went by myself, and I was like, "Yo, Blue, hey man." He's like, "What's up, C? you know, glad to see you again. What's going on? I said, man, it's just been a hell of a few weeks, bro. I ain't been out, I ain't kicked it in a while. And look, man, I'm gonna get it in. I'm just letting you know, bro. I'm here to get it in. So he was like, as normally he would say, hey man, this is your place. This ain't my place. This is your place to come do what you got to do. So man, let me tell you something. The DJ got to playing, man, and as all great DJs would do, they would make sure they get some of that 80s stuff in, right? So you talk about, your Eric B and Rakim, your Sugar Hill Gang, your Grandmaster Flash, your KRS-One, your Rakim, your EPMD, your Easy E, the NWA, right? Your LL Cool J. So your Dougie Fresh, right? So I remember, man, I was in there getting it. You know what I'm saying? Like I was in there getting it. It didn't matter. You know how you got like I wasn't necessarily dancing with anybody because you know how like when you get on a big dance floor, sometimes you got the people dancing with partners and you got the people that just out there. That was just me. That was just out there, man. And I was just letting loose. I was just letting it all go because I had so much stress and anxiety, built up that I just let this music do what it do. And by this time again, this probably man, this I don't know, this was many years ago. Uh, Again, time just kind of makes you forget how long something ago was, but it seemed like didn't seem like it was that long ago, but I'm sure it was many years ago. But I just remember, man, I just let loose, man, like I was possessed, and there was no shame to my game. And I remember Blue telling me, he was like, man, see, I ain't never seen you like that. Never seen you like that, boy, but you got it in. And I remember, man, it was just therapeutic like that. I got it in. Incidentally, I don't know if you ever saw. There's a deal on, I believe it's Amazon Prime, and it's called Small Acts. It's a trilogy. It's a trilogy, but it's not really a trilogy. It's three small films, not small films. I'm sorry. There's three films, separate films from a guy named Steve McQueen, not the action star from years ago, but this is a brother from East London, and he did three movies, and it's all under this caption of Small Acts. Well, the second movie is called Lovers Rock, and in Lovers Rock, it's really all about these people going to a dance, and they're like Caribbean, they're Caribbean people from the West Indies, and they getting it in, you know. I got hip to Janet K's Silly Games, which is really funny. If you should see it, and you're gonna, when you hear Silly Games, you go, I had no idea how popular it was. I had never heard it before, let alone know how popular it was. But there were instances where these people would just it's like listen, it wasn't about the style in which they were dancing. It was about you know letting the music literally take you over. And so there was no real beauty, no real, I'm gonna show you these moves I got. I'm gonna do the cabbage patch, I'm gonna do the smurf. It wasn't about that. It wasn't naming a dance. Excuse me. It was literally just letting this music engulf your whole soul. And the more you did it, the more the people around you got into it too. You know what I mean? So it was like these people were like, like if you see somebody at church, those of you in black churches, when you see somebody get happy, it's like they was getting happy, you know, dancing. And that's what dancing is really for. Dancing is not, if you can make it look good, then you can make it look good. That's great. But the purpose of dancing is to have joy, joy. And a lot of people, like myself, get really embarrassed and shame over dancing because people tease them, laugh at them. Uh, Brene Brown talked about in her book, um, she talked about her daughter. And now her daughter, they were in Nordstrom getting some shoes. She was returning some shoes for her daughter. And this song came on, and her daughter started dancing, And these other two women, had their daughters in the shoe department as well. And they were looking at the daughter like, they were looking at Brene's daughter like, look at her. What is she doing? She's embarrassing herself. And Brene said that, when I first looked at my daughter, I thought to myself, man, she out here embarrassing me. You know what I'm saying? Look, but she said, for whatever reason, I was quick enough, and alert enough and aware enough to say, you know what, choose my daughter, choose her. choose her. So she said, paraphrasing. So I thought to myself, well, you know, she looked at her and said, well, you can't do that without doing the robot. So, she starts doing the robot and stuff, and now they both looking quote unquote silly. Uh, and see, and that's the thing. See, so she knew that if she made her daughter feel some type of way based on what these other people thought, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that could affect you for the rest of your life. Being ashamed of who you are. Again, the purpose of dancing is to, feel free to let go. It's not about your form. Again, that ain't no hating on anybody that can dance. I know people who can dance. I was talking to my son about this. And my son Christian, and he's like, yeah, Daddy, I kind of know what you mean, except, I got the moves. So I would call that, that's all great. Again, I would call that performative dance. But again, it doesn't have to be performative if you are still getting the most out of it, you know, then that's what counts. I don't care if you're doing the cha-cha, the electric slide, if you're doing some name dance or you're doing some unnamed dance. Now, there's sometimes I remember I went to Paisley Park with my guys, my football guys, and we went a couple of times, went for a tour, but we also went back for a party. And it was like a little DJ, and all he was doing was playing all Prince stuff. And the crowd was mostly white, a lot of young people, but they were like Prince diehard fans. And I remember this one white gentleman, young cat. He was just dancing, man. And I'm telling you, he was so into it. And while he was dancing, he was singing like every lyric to every Prince song, that they played. I mean, they played a couple Prince songs I hadn't even heard of, and I'm a huge Prince fan, but he still knew all the words to these songs, and he was just in his own world. He had his girl with him, but he was with her, but he was still in his own world. He was twirling and doing his thing, and I remember just walking up to him and I said, "Man, you know what, brother, you have truly given me joy. You gave me joy because I see you in this magical bliss of this music, and it was just a beautiful thing." And he was like, "Yeah, man, thank you. And so to see him free like that, it gave me again, I've already gotten past my inhibitions about dancing, but I just saw him, enjoying it, and it just really blessed me. So, so there's that. Uh, and you know, one thing about shame, that's the other thing to remember, that because this thing tend to come to you when you're young. uh that's why it's so hard to recognize. It's so hard to recognize. um there are other more serious ways you could be shamed. Some of us are sexually shamed, whether it's performance. uh there are times I think when someone could talk about your body parts or your stomach or your stretch marks or whatever. If somebody mentions something like that, in that heat of the moment, or in the moment where it's supposed to be passion or whatever, that that can add some shame. But again, a lot of it comes when you're a kid, and it could be again through clothing. I remember looking at my Keds, my Keds, if you know what Keds are, their shoes, tennis shoes. I don't know if they're still Keds anymore, but that's like what you used to get, from Kmart. They was like knockoffs, like, instead of All Star with the All Star on it, would have Keds on it. And I remember looking at, other people's shoes and stuff, and ooh, I wonder if I had those shoes, that kind of stuff. So, um, but one thing about shame is, again, that I think is important, and I know I'm just all over the place, but I'm just trying to talk it through. Is shame goes into, like, it deals with your inner core stuff, right? So that's one of the most important things to recognize, between shame and embarrassment. Shame goes at your core. Again, embarrassment, things that are normal to humans being human. Uh, that's all external, but it doesn't, those external things don't really create inhibitions, right? So, and another thing about shame, man, and here's the reason why you have to deal with it. You have to confront it head on because you can't outperform shame. You cannot outperform shame. So, what do I mean by that? I mean, if you got really big shame issues, you won't even know how to take a compliment. You know, if you think that you're a mistake, if you think that you're not really worthy of praise, uh, somebody be like, "Hey, man, I really like, I really like your, yeah, I really like the way you think, or I really like the way you performed in that musical or whatever." And you'd be like, "Yeah, well, it was really the rest of the guys that made it happen." Or they may say, "Man, you're really smart. That was a really great observation. Yeah, I really need to study more." You know what I mean? So you're gonna always play it down. So it doesn't matter whether you're really performing at an excellent level, you're still not going to really embrace, who you really are. You're gonna always downplay it, to make, to satisfy that narrative that you're less than. You're less than. And that was me. That was me. I don't mind telling you that. Most of y'all who really know me know that that was me. I used to couldn't take a compliment, man. It was really difficult, really, really difficult to take a compliment. But now, hey, man, I own that shit. You know what I'm saying? I own it. I own my good qualities. I own uh, my accomplishments. Uh, I remember my mother telling me one day, this was when I was struggling trying to find a job. And she was like, "I really appreciate you doing what you do when you're roughing, because what you showed was even if you didn't have a job, you went and made a job." And it's things like that that I can own now. You know, uh, I own that I'm a sharp guy. I don't think I'm stupid or anything like that. And I don't have to downplay it. I know that I'm talented. I know that I'm an excellent, sports official, especially when it comes to basketball, football, baseball. Those are my best sports. And there's nobody that I believe there's nobody that can out ref me. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't mean that I can't learn more, that I'm not always constantly learning and constantly evolving, into being the best that I can be. But at the same time, hey, don't shout me down. I could go out there and do that. Any game. I've told the signers that. I've told the signers, "Hey, man, you don't have to hire me, but that's on you. That's your loss." Because I could be a great asset to your organization. So that's not me bragging or anything like that. That's just me owning my truth. That's me owning the results of the work that I put in. So uh, so if you're dealing with shame and you're trying to get through it, again, if you decide, if you're not at the point where you want to go to counseling, therapy, something like that, then there are ways that you can start, identifying, whether you're dealing, what areas of shame you may be dealing with. So like say if you got certain thoughts in your head, you may ask yourself, "Hey, is this thought that I had really true?" If I'm feeling like I'm worth nothing, you know, is that really true? Like you just taking the emotion out about it, right? And if it is true, how do you know if it's true? What is the evidence of that thought? Um, what is the evidence against this thought? You know, um, is this thought helping me or hurting me? Again, this is the research that I just looked up, from the site that I talked about before, which was behavior evolution. I had to scroll back up to it. Just asking yourself, critical questions. What would happen if I let go of this thought? You know, what would happen? What would life look like if I thought the opposite? If I accepted the opposite, is that something that I'm willing to embrace? Am I willing to embrace that I'm valuable? What would that look like in my heart and my mind? Uh, you know, uh, and finally, man, as we get ready to wrap this up, I would say, if you need help, get it. By all means, there's no shame in the game. Again, there are therapists out there who go by your income, who, if you don't happen to have insurance, Um, but shame is just a very debilitating. It's a very debilitating entity, and it takes work. It takes work. And I'm sure that there are areas of shame that I have in my life right now that I don't even recognize. But I believe that because I'm aware of shame and what it is, I think that when I start to feel it, I'll recognize it now as opposed to just accepting it as a way of life, accepting it as my thought, right? You know, uh, and so again, if you need help, get it. Start asking yourself critical questions and challenge yourself to think more of what you can be and what a life without shame, what a life without shame would look like for you, right? So last thing I would say about that, two things is number one, you know, do what you need to do so you can stop shaming yourself. Uh, and then the last thing is please, please, please do not do or say things to shame other people. Please. So, with that, we'll transition to our movie review. Our movie review comes by way of my oldest daughter, Sherelle. Sherelle suggested to me a couple weeks ago that I watch The United States versus Billie Holiday. So I had already heard of this movie, and it was kind of on my list, but it wasn't on my immediately to do list thing. But when she told me I needed to watch it, she had just got me on Behind Her Eyes, which is a great series, a fun series. I'm hoping that Sherelle and I actually talked about doing a podcast on like each episode, talk about Behind Her Eyes, which is a really very well written, twisting and turning plot twist thing that's on Netflix. But anyway, back to the United States versus Billie Holiday. So once she told me about it, I said, okay, I'm gonna check it out. And I had watched a movie and then I watched this one right afterwards. So let's talk about this. This is a movie that's directed by Lee Daniels. Most of you know him from The Butler and Precious. It stars Audra Day as Miss Lady Day herself. Trevante Rose, who is Jimmy Fletcher. Jimmy Fletcher is like an FBI informant who becomes Billy's lover. Garrett Hedlund, which is Jimmy Anslinger. Jimmy Anslinger was a guy who worked for J. Edgar Hoover. It was in charge of uh, the drug war, like really the first drug war after uh, the overturn of Prohibition. We'll get into that. Melvin Gregg. Melvin Gregg plays Joe Guy, who's a guy who happens to be a dude in Billy's band. Uh, Most of us know if you're a Snowfall fan, then you know Drew Miller as Man Boy. Uh, Man, he's like Pretty Ricky, what they call him. That's kind of what he reminds me of. But he's really an excellent actor. Uh, Man, one thing of note, the cinematography is Andrew Dunn. He's also did the batch. He also did. I'm sorry, he did the Butlers with Lee Daniels. The cinematography in this is great. So anyway, a quick synopsis is, after the Prohibition, the FBI, they turned um, their faces away from alcohol and towards drugs. And like I said, it was really the first war on drugs, and um, what they went after specifically as the target were black jazz musicians. And here's what Anslinger said about jazz musicians. He wrote this. This is actually in his memos, his actual memos. It says it sounds like the jungles in the dead of the night. He also called it unbelievably ancient and decent rites of East Indies are resurrected in this black man's music. The lives of the jazz man, he said, reeks of filth, right? So the FBI, they actually had a group of black GIs, right? G-men who Anslinger was over. These guys, they were FBI agents officially. However, they were not with the white FBI agents. They actually, their office was in a basement, a dungeon, if you will, where they were separated. And Obviously, they didn't have the same power or authority, but they were definitely used to infiltrate. And one of the reasons why they targeted Billie Holiday was because she had a song by the name of "Strange Fruit." Uh, "Strange Fruit." Most of you are familiar with it. If you're not, it's a song that Billie Holiday wrote and she sang all around the country regarding the lynching of black men. And "Strange Fruit" is actually black men hanging from trees. So she sang this song. She was a jazz woman, and she also happened to be addicted to heroin. So that's three strikes against her. And the funny thing about Billie Holiday when it came to "Strange Fruit" is, like, a lot of you remember Straight Outta Compton. You remember when NWA was, uh, they went to arrest them in Detroit after, after they sang "Fuck the Police." I remember they got Bobby Brown when he was in Georgia for gyrating and whatnot, doing his thing. Well, apparently, Billie Holiday, Lady Day, was the first person to be NWA'd, if you will. So, in essence, you could say that they were Billie Holiday, because she was the first person to be snatched off a stage um, for singing a song. Police were literally standing there waiting to see if she was a song. And one thing about Lady Day, man, she was a G. She did not play around. She was a G. So she sang that song and, hey, do what you got to do. So there's a lot to the story, besides the FBI's war on Billie Holiday. There was also um, Billie's husband, Louis McKay, who was like her promoter, but he was also extremely abusive. He also worked with the FBI. Uh, man, a whole lot of sexism and misogyny in these days, where the thought of a black woman being powerful enough, to display her talents and to own her career, to own her truth, and to be in charge of herself was really, really telling. And basically, man, the FBI, they tortured her. They really, literally tortured her until she was on her deathbed, um, which you'll be able to see in the movie. So I will say this: Andra Day is absolutely phenomenally incredible in this movie. Her performance is par excellent. Um, I'm gonna have to watch it again. It's kind of painful to watch, but I'm gonna watch it again just for her performance because she was so tough. In my opinion, I believe that the United States versus Billie Holiday is Lee Daniels' best work. It's my opinion. So you should check it out. So that's going to do it for us today for this show. Thank you so much for joining us. If you like us, subscribe to us on our YouTube channel at For Real Though Show. Or you can email us at the number 4 REALTHO show at gmail.com. So as always, hey, stay healthy, stay safe. If you haven't gotten your vaccine yet, hey, get that schedule, take care of that, and hey, as always, keep it real. For real though. Peace.